Okay, good morning. Today's Monday, the 8th day of Iyar, and we continue in the Tanya, chapter 46. Alter Rebbe explains in this chapter the beautiful way that we appreciate Hashem, what Hashem does for us. And he uses the example. It says, Kamayim aponim laponim, ken leva adam al adam. When a person has a positive feeling towards another person, the other person reciprocates. And when a person does something great for another person, the other person gets the feeling of love. And especially if the two people are not on the same level. But we're talking about a great, mighty king that comes and elevates a person who is in such a low place that had nothing to himself. And the king elevates him and he brings him up by himself and brings him to his own palace, to his personal private room, and he hugs him and he kisses him and he showers love on him. How much love the person would feel. The same thing says Alter Rebbe in this chapter, that this is what we should feel, what Hashem does for us. And what is he talking about? What does Hashem do for us? So he talks about the very fact that we were so sunk into the depth of the darkness in Egypt among the nations and involved with the idolatry and all the terrible things that we went through there. Hashem elevated us, and he said all of the things he uses in the example. He says the hugging, the kissing, everything is explained in this case, explaining the connection between us and Hashem. Is like he's saying the kissing is the kissing mouth to mouth from the words of the Torah, God's words in our mouth, the unifying with Hashem in the spirit is the understanding, the godliness. The hugging is the mitzvahs. When we do the mitzvahs are like there is the mitzvahs that are from the right side, from the left side, there are mitzvahs in the center. There's like a body with two arms. And when we do the mitzvah of Hashem, we're being hugged by Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe ended up saying yesterday that the union that we have with Hashem through the mitzvahs is like a union of a husband and wife. And this is why he says, when you marry, when you're doing the ceremony of the marriage, you say, "Arei at mekudeshet li." You are here betrothed to me, or consecrated. And the same thing when we make a bracha before we do the mitzvah, we say, "Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, Asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav," that you sanctified us with your mitzvahs. He's using the same word, the mekudeshet, which means sanctity, by a wife. In the same way, Hashem sanctified us or betrothed us. And he explains that the word kideshanu, we can have two explanations, two meanings what that means. Kideshanu means betrothed, like mekudeshet. And so this explains the union that is created between us and Hashem while doing a mitzvah. That just like a husband and wife get connected, united, the same thing, we become connected with Hashem when we do the mitzvah. And another explanation, another meaning of the word kiddushanu. Kiddushanu also means, it talks about how high Hashem lifts us up, sanctifies us. Kiddushanu is from the word kodesh. Kodesh means elevated, separated. That means separated from the rest of the world, separated from all the levels. He elevates us to a very, very high level. And in marriage, the concept of separation is also there. Because when he's saying Areyat Mekudeshet, what does it mean, Mekudeshet? It means that you are now separated from the rest of the world. That means you cannot be with any other man, and you're separated to me. But now the husband and the wife are exclusive. Nobody else can be united with them. And the same thing is Hashem separates us and he elevates us with the mitzvahs. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain that when you do a mitzvah, at that moment when you do a mitzvah, you are connected and united with Hashem in such a way and elevated from the rest of the world. You're elevated, even a very simple person who does a mitzvah, you put on tefillin, you give tzedakah, you do something good, you do something positive, you're elevated into a very high level, except we don't see that. We don't see anything special about a person that does the mitzvah. But the truth is, says Alter Rebbe, any person that does a mitzvah, at the moment when you do a mitzvah, there is the light of Hashem shines in you. And you are on a totally different level, elevated from the rest of the world. Let's see how the Alter Rebbe says it inside. Says the Alter Rebbe, "Velochein imshil shleimoi olav hashalom b'shir hashirim yichud zeh leyichud chasan vekala." He says, therefore did King Solomon, peace unto him, in the Song of Songs, the famous book of the Bible, the Song of Songs, it's considered a very holy book. And in this book, King Solomon describes the unification between Hashem and the Jewish people, like the union of a chassan, of a groom and a bride. He compares this union of God and the Jews through the Torah mitzvahs with the union of bridegroom and bride. And that book, the Song of Songs, that brings so many descriptions about that union. Bidveika, v'chasheka, v'chafetza, b'chibug, v'nishuk. This union being attached, being with attachment, an external level of unity, with longing, a more inward level of unity, and desire, an even more inward level of unity, with embrace and kissing, all of these descriptions. Says the Alter Rebbe, and this is the meaning when we say the blessing Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvah, that you have sanctified us with his commandments. In addition to what we learned yesterday, the interpretation, a little different interpretation. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvah. We're going to go back to yesterday's class, you'll see it inside. And then we'll learn that Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvah, he says, Ka'adam ha'mekadesh, and the way he translates it here, blessed be he who has betrothed us by his commandments, like a man who betroths his wife. Here it says, and today the Alter Rebbe gives the second meaning of Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvah. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvah, who has sanctified us by his commandments. What does it mean? She'elonu le'malas kodesh ha'elyon baruch hu, that he has elevated us to the heights of the supreme holiness, shehi kedushosei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chveido ve'atzmai, which is the holiness of the Holy One, blessed be he himself. Hashem elevates us to the holiness of himself. Ugdusha, Now, what does it mean, the concept of Kedusha, holiness, as the Alter Rebbe? Kedusha Lashon Avdala. Kedusha, holiness, is a term indicating separateness. Masha Kodesh Baruch Hu Muvdal Me'o'ilamis. In that the Holy One, blessed be He, is apart from the world. What does it mean Hashem is apart from the world? So we explained in the previous lessons that there is the level of Hashem, the way He condenses His light and His energy to the point that the world should be able to receive that level of energy. And then there is Hashem Himself, which is it's called, it's Hashem surrounds the world, encompassing the world, transcends the world, to the point that it cannot, this level of energy of Hashem cannot be enclosed within the world. And this is where Hashem elevates us to that level. This being the quality of encompassing all worlds, being unable to clothe himself within them. So because of the inability of created being to absorb the extreme holiness of this transcendent level, God, as it were, cannot enclose itself within the worlds, and therefore affects them in an encompassing manner. It is to this lofty level that Jews are elevated through their performance of mitzvahs. When you do a mitzvah, you're connected with Hashem's will at that moment, and therefore you're being elevated to that level. Because of the unbelievable words. It says, for through the union of the soul with and its absorption into the light of the Ein Sof of Hashem, it attains the quality and degree of holiness of the blessed Ein Sof himself. Every Jew, by doing a mitzvah, you attain the holiness of Hashem himself, of God himself. Since it unites itself with him and is integrated into him, and they become truly one. You and the Torah, and the physical body. You cannot do the mitzvah of tefillin without the physical body. You cannot light the Shabbos candle without the physical hands. So this becomes one with Hashem. V'zeu shekasuv. And Alter Rebbe brings now support to this idea from the verses in the Torah itself. So it says, V'hisem li kadoshim ki kadosh ani Hashem. This is the meaning of the verse. And you shall be holy unto me, for I, the Lord, am holy. So the verse gives us the reason for the Jews' sanctity, connecting it with God's supreme holiness, which Jews can attain through Torah and mitzvahs. And then what it says also in that verse, it says, V'avdil eschem min ha'amim li yisli. And I have separated you from other people, that you should be mine. So here we see that the holiness implies separation. As mentioned earlier, that Kedusha, holy, means separated. Just like the wife is separated from the rest of the world to become yours and become an exclusive union. Then the Alter Rebbe brings another verse, and it says also, V'oimer, V'asisem eskol mitzvaisai, V'yisem kedoshim leleikeichem, Ani Hashem Elokeichem v'gomer. Another verse states You shall fulfill all my commandments and be holy unto your God. I am the Lord your God. So he says over here, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain like this. You know, when we say by the blessings, in the Amida, the Shemona Esra, we say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoteinu, blessed are you God, our God, God of our fathers, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, v'Elokei Yaakov, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov. And what does that mean when you say the God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, are the three different gods? What's going on over here? Whose God is it? It's all of us God, God of everyone, God of the entire world. Why do we specify Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov? And the answer is that the patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they became so completely nullified to Hashem that they sort of lost their own identity. Their identity became the identity of God. Anything they wanted, anything they did was naturally became part of them. Part of their being became serving Hashem. They became like a chariot to God, as they used the words. So that when you say Elokei Avraham, it means God became their God. That is what we say when we do a mitzvah. When each and every one of you does a mitzvah, you say Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav, that you sanctified us. So in this verse, the Torah says, when you do the mitzvahs, v'asisem es kol mitzvosai, do all my mitzvahs, ani Hashem Elokeichem, I become your God. So that exactly the way when Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the whole life, they became, Hashem was their God. While you do a mitzvah, Hashem is your God, meaning you are united with Hashem as one, just like Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Unbelievable. Continues the Alter Rebbe. That's what it says. Another verse states, you shall fulfill all my commandments and be holy unto your God. Ani Hashem Elokeichem. I am the Lord your God. The term your God in the possessive form recalls the relationship set up when a man betroths a woman, whereby she becomes his wife. Continues the Alter Rebbe, Pirush. The meaning is that that through the fulfillment of the commandments, I become your God. In the same manner that it was with the ancestors, Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, Kemoi, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak v'chulu. As God is called the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and so on. Shenikra Kain, mipnei she'a'avos oyu bechinas makov lo yizbarich. Now they were called thus because the patriarchs were on the level of a vehicle unto him, as we just explained, completely nullified to the will of Hashem. Ubetelim v'nichlalim be'oirei, and they were nullified and absorbed in his light. V'kocho b'chol nefesh miYisrael b'sh'as eisek ha'Torah v'hamitzvos. So it is with the soul of every Jew at the time he is occupied with Torah and the commandments. Every time a Jew does a mitzvah, Hashem shines in him. And the Rebbe brings out an interesting fact. He says that we see it also in the halacha, in the code of Jewish law. And it says when a person does a mitzvah, you must stand up in front of the person who does the mitzvah. The example is, for example, there is in the laws of Bikurim, the laws when they bring the fruits, the first fruits in Jerusalem. And the Mishnah says that whenever the entourage with the people that came from all over Israel to Jerusalem with the fruits, with the wagons, the people who would they are passing by, they would close the stores, everyone would come, would stand up for them, because they're doing the mitzvah. And although we don't find it that much, for whatever reason, but it does say in halacha also, even today. For example, it says in the Shulchan Aruch about the laws on a funeral. It says by a funeral, if when the body passes by, we must stand up. And the commentators, the Taz, explains, why do we stand up? One would think we stand up to respect the person who passed away. But the Taz says, no, that's not the reason why we stand up. The reason we stand up is because the people who carry the coffin, they are performing a mitzvah of gemilus chasadim, doing kind things. The people who accompany the body, they perform a mitzvah. So because they are performing a mitzvah, we must stand up for them. Interesting. And this is exactly what Alter Rebbe says here in the Tanya. He says, we are supposed to stand up in front of anyone who does a mitzvah. Why? Because at that moment when you do the mitzvah, Hashem is right there united with you. So God is in you when you do the mitzvah. Interesting concept. Says the Alter Rebbe. Therefore, the sages of blessed memory made it obligatory. Lakum v'lamoid mipnei kol oiseg b'mitzvah, to rise and remain standing in the presence of anyone who is engaged in fulfilling a commandment. Af im hu bu ve'am, even if the person who does the mitzvah is an uncultured and illiterate, it doesn't matter what kind of level of a Jew it is. When such a person performs a mitzvah, such as bringing bikurim, the first fruits, at the Beis Hamikdash, one must rise before him. And the reason why, this is because God dwells and clothed in himself in this man's soul at such time. Hashem is there. It is only that his soul is unconscious of this sanctity that resides within him at the time of his performance. And the reason why he doesn't feel it is because he's very coarse. The body is very materialistic and coarse body. Because of the barrier of the bodily grossness, now the body is not being refined. And the body dims the eyes of the soul and preventing it from seeing divine vision. As experienced by the patriarchs and others of their stature, who saw their world, the spiritual world to come, the world to come, they saw during their lifetime. They were able to see this. They say about I mentioned this more than once, but the Alter Rebbe himself. He said before he passed away, he looked up on the beams of the ceiling. He said, I don't see a beam, I see God. So they were able to see the godliness within everything. So that's the end of today's share. And what is the beautiful lesson we learn from here? how much we should appreciate the fact every moment we're able to do a mitzvah. Every time we do a mitzvah, Hashem literally is united with us in a fullest way. If we would only be able to see this, how much mitzvahs would we do? But the fact we know we're lucky to have this Tanya that teaches us this depth, these deep teachings, understanding that we appreciate, we know what the mitzvahs is. So let's do it. Let's bring Mashiach one mitzvah at a time, because more mitzvahs that we bring to this world, this is spreads the light around the world, and the light of the mitzvahs will completely eliminate the darkness of this world. Let's do another mitzvah and let's bring Mashiach. Thank you for joining, and we shall see you, B'ez Hashem, tomorrow as well.